Hello, I am Marilyn. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Marilyn.
Seems that our custom is to say sobriety date, that's February 8th, 1972. And I live in Los Angeles. I'm a member of the Pacific Group. 10 minutes here. Seems like the theme of this weekend has been sponsorship. A lot of talk about that, which is hugely important in my life. I think it's essential for all of us coming into the fellowship to accept that gift, the gift of sponsorship. And what other organization in the world allows you to walk in and see a complete stranger and say, can I turn my life over to you and will you take care of me from here on out and let me call you at 3 o'clock in the morning? And we say yes to things like that. And I've had 3 wonderful sponsors. I got to the program through a 12-step call, but that was not for a while. I was drinking and scaring my family. I had 3 little children. I couldn't take care of them. My husband brought his mother in to make sure that they were safe, and then my mother would come. And my mother-in-law gave me some encouragement. Unless you get control of your life, we're going to lock you up and you'll never see the children again. Just encouragement. And so I went to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1969. And that was so scary. Somebody took my hand and said, you are intense. We're going to take you to a place where the really sick people go. And they took me to the Pacific Group. And it was indeed scary. There were 400 million teeth, big smiles, welcome, and definitely carnivorous. And there was a leader and founder, people they called Clancy, and he was the scariest of all. And then there was another one, Marion, who seemed to be gentle, a goddess of sobriety. And oh my gosh, I didn't have the words for it, but I wanted what she had. And I just wanted her to come over and just take possession of me. I'm going to be your sponsor and I'll love you to pieces. And she never did that, so I never said hello. And then mother-in-law went home, so I went home, and of course I could taper on very quickly. And this disease progresses, even though we're not drinking. I'd stayed sober for about 3 or 4 months. And then when I started drinking again, I was in very bad shape in no time, and went to a doctor, and the doctor diagnosed it as chronic alcoholism. And I thought, well, I'm dealing with somebody who does not know what he's doing. So I never went to see him again. He had talked about hospitals, and so I just went home and drank more. But I was dying of alcoholism. Called central office, and somebody came to get me and took me off to the Pacific Group again. Well, I just protested, but I said I wanted to find somebody named Marion. If I could find her, I'd be a happy person. So we went to a meeting, and the main speaker that night was Marion, of all people. Just one of those amazing coincidences. And she became my wonderful sponsor for a while. But earlier on, I talked about one of my most grievous character defects was just unhealthy, very sick dependency, which I formed on Marion, with talents deeply embedded. And love me, you don't love me, do you? And Marion would say, I love you, I want you to be sober. And I would do that daily. And finally she said, I'll never tell you again that I love you because you won't believe it. And my heart was broken, but I continued to ask her and beg her and do everything she said. And before the year was out, she, with her husband, moved away to another city, and she told me I needed to get a new sponsor. And I said, I'll never find another Marion. And I was absolutely right. She moved away, and I did not have my Marion. I said, I'll get drunk. And she said, no, you won't. You'll find another sponsor. Stick with the program. You need to have a sponsor in your home group. Well, I showed Marion. I didn't get a sponsor because I could never find another Marion. And I went sponsorless for 16 years. Yeah. And I had a good friend who's my friend today. And that served me very, very well because I was fully accountable to her. I never called her sponsor, but she called me on all of my craziness. And when I was 16 years sober, I was drifting far afield, though, with that friendship. And I'd gone back to work, and I was worshiping job, other people, money, things that I could buy with money, and headed out the door. And I was in Israel with my daughter and had a giant awakening on the Sea of Galilee. Now, you know, if God wants to do something, God often does it in Israel. Like God founded 3 great religions, for example. So what happened to me was not so startling, but it certainly changed my life once and for all. And that's when I just realized that I'm going down the wrong path, and came back to the States and came back to the Pacific Group. And by that time, I knew that I needed a sponsor, and Clancy became my sponsor, and he was my sponsor for 30 years. And I learned so much about Alcoholics Anonymous from his example, the way he interacted with all of us, the direction I got from him. I began to sponsor people, got much more deeply into our big book, our 12 and 12, have sponsorship meetings once a week where we read through the big book and then we read through the 12 and 12, and then once a month we have a Steps, Traditions, Concepts meeting. And that has been beautiful until August 24th, 3 years ago, and Clancy left planet Earth and went to that next place that where we all meet up again, I am sure. So once more I was without a sponsor. But this time, I wanted to have a sponsor. I'd remembered those years without one, and that's a hard way to do the program. I was at a retreat two weeks after Clancy passed away, and Father Tom W., a Jesuit Catholic priest like Father Ed Dowling, who had been sober, he's been sober for 47 years, was leading the retreat, and I've been a part of that, his retreat for years and years, always admired him. Never thought of him as a sponsor, but just out of the blue he said, you know, I'll sponsor anyone. And I thought, here's my opening. And after that I asked him if he would be my sponsor. For 3 years he has been my wonderful sponsor. And I realized that I have gotten exactly what I need at every step of sobriety. In those years when I didn't have a sponsor, that was me saying, I can really do this by myself. I've got a good friend. I don't recommend that. But on the other hand, I think I learned my lesson, and I have been so grateful to this program for providing these people in my sobriety that have made all the difference in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Marilyn, and now we have Bob.
I'm Bob, an alcoholic. I was in Jerusalem after Maryland, and when the sun's in the sky at a certain place and you stand before the wall in Jerusalem and you squint, you can see the names Abraham, Jesus, Mohammed, Maryland. You know, I was fortunate. I fell into the hands of a group in the fellowship, these 5 percenters, and they pushed me into 12-step work. And I didn't even know why I was doing it. And I discovered the same thing that Bill Wilson discovered, that my depressive, mopey, negative, horrible nature that eventually drives me back to drinking seemed to be treated in 12-step work. And I didn't, I did it for a long time before I woke up to what was going on, where you have those moments where you were really depressed and you end up on a 12-step call and you're uplifted. It's exactly what Wilson talks about in his story, being miraculously uplifted and set on his feet. And I started doing it for the reason that a lot of us do it, because it makes you feel good. But then somewhere along the line, living in Las Vegas, it started to shift a little bit. You know, if helping other drunks is your purpose, Vegas is a target-rich environment. And there's opportunities that are endless there to help drunks. And so I started doing it more of a self-fulfilling purpose into a bigger purpose, that maybe this is what God wants me to do, is to help drunks. And I did that, and my life started becoming rich and full. And that coupled with the rest of the steps, especially step 8 and 9, started to change the way I felt about myself. I started finding a new freedom. I started finding a freedom from the bondage of self in these actions that some people never find, because I don't know why. Are they too selfish to devote their life to helping others? Are they too stuck? I don't know. But I was very fortunate. I found the freedom from the bondage of self in that work. And then over the decades, and I've been sober since October 31st, 1978. I have a home group. Marilyn's my sponsor. And over the decades, I started being influenced by my experience. And I started seeing something in Alcoholics Anonymous that has shifted. Some things change, and yet some things remain the same. And what started changing in me was a consciousness that maybe I have another purpose here too. And maybe all of us fundamentalists do. You know, we live in a time when there's a lot of the basic fundamental principles of Alcoholics Anonymous are viewed often as being outdated. Singleness of purpose in a lot of areas in Alcoholics Anonymous around the world is viewed as being outdated. That was fine back when alcohol was the primary thing. But oh my God, there's people coming here dying of other problems. We should help them. Anonymity is often viewed as being outdated. I mean, that was great at a time when there was stigma attached to alcoholism, and you didn't want to let people know you were in AA, so you had to be anonymous, and which is not the principle of anonymity, is the principle of humility. There was God. You know, we're moving into a more sectarian time. That was fine back in the day, but that's outdated. That comes from the old religious consciousness in the United States decades and decades ago. We've moved into something more modern. All this sponsorship stuff and 12-step work, it's kind of outdated, isn't it? I mean, for God's sakes, you got intensive outpatient programs all over the place. I mean, what do you need a sponsor for? You go there. You got recovery coaches, which if you're like wired, your ego is wired like me, you know that you're probably going to get more value paying a guy to sponsor you than you would from some plumber that goes to AA meetings. I mean, that guy's doesn't even have an education. I need someone of depth and complexity for my nuances and problems. And we don't do 12-step work as much anymore. We used to do a lot of it. It's institutionalized now, often. And I watched 12-step work shift back in the late 70s, early 80s. It shifted from, we used to go out on calls. I mean, oh my God, we'd go out to these houses that you'd walk in and the stench would overcome you, and people dying of alcoholism. Tables covered with bottles of Thunderbird and just, and vodka, and they're dying, puke, and dishes piled up. And we'd go out there and we'd clean the house for them, and we'd talk to them, and we'd tell them about Alcoholics Anonymous, and if we were lucky, we'd get them. Sometimes we'd take them to a hospital and get them detoxed. Sometimes we detox them in our homes, and then gradually, as the treatment industry became stronger and stronger, we get less of that. And I thank God I was already in position through my first sponsor, he did the first H&I meetings in Las Vegas. That's how I met him. He brought me into detox, and he encouraged me to do the same thing. So as the shift happened, and the pool of opportunity to 12-step people and detox them in your house, et cetera, started to diminish and dry up, I was already in place I'm going to these treatment centers every week, and so I still had a source of what would become essential to relieve me intermittently of this bondage of self, which will consume me if I don't. Will consume me. And yet, over the years, as I saw these things change in Alcoholics Anonymous, I get a tremendous sense that maybe we are being called here. The fundamentalists, the people who believe in the traditions, the people who believe in the actions of service, the people who believe that their primary purpose is truly their primary number one purpose, that we're being called to keep that alive in a world where it's under fire often. And I want to do that. I have a grandson who I adore. And if you want to see a baby picture of me and a baby picture of him, he looks exactly like me, which means he's immensely handsome and humble looking. In my family tree, alcoholism skips every other generation. My parents weren't alcoholic, theirs were. My daughter's not an alcoholic. High chances are, that my grandson, who I think is amazing, could grow up to be an alcoholic. Which means if that's true to form, and he's a chronic alcoholic, his day will come. My day was on a bridge in 1978 where I tried to take my own life. Some of you came to places full of shame and guilt, and you wished you were dead. And Alcoholics Anonymous just happened to be there. Just happened to be there. As I came off that bridge and ended up through a bizarre series of circumstances in my last detox, Alcoholics Anonymous was there. And I'd like Alcoholics Anonymous as we know it. What would have happened to me if I would have gone into my last detox and been given a bill and for a monthly fee for my new sponsor, and put into a long-term treatment center where they keep you for a year or so, no AA meetings, we're studying smart recovery, which in my experience doesn't seem that smart to me. What would have happened to me? I don't think I'd be here today. And so I feel a shift in my purpose is still to help drunks. Probably it always will be, because some things remain the same. And yet some things change, and I really, as of the last few years, feel a strong purpose in trying to encourage other fundamental alcoholics. If you're grateful for your sobriety and you're grateful for what AA's done in your life, don't talk about it, show it. Act it out. Encourage other people to do AA. Stand up for the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, even if it makes you unpopular in certain meetings where anything goes. Stand up, because if you don't stand for something, we end up falling for anything. And so I think it's important to me. And this is, I know I sound like I'm on a soapbox. Kind of am, maybe, I don't know. But it's important to me. And if you're as grateful for your sobriety, and you know that you were under a death sentence, and maybe you thought about killing yourself, and maybe you were that alcoholic, and here you are, and you're relatively free, and you know the truth, you didn't do that. Alcoholics Anonymous was a vehicle for you to access a power that could do for you what you couldn't do for yourself. Let's not dismantle the vehicle. Thanks.
And now we have Miss Mari.
My name is Marilyn. I'm an alcoholic. My dry date is the 10th of August 1984. My group is the Third Tradition group in Markham Village. And I am so delighted to be here. And one more time I'd like to thank Jerry and the committee and John and the two Johns and everybody who participated here. I was sitting here thinking this morning about the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Look at us. Sunday morning. Lord, it's good to be sober on a Sunday morning. What do you think? Eh? Are you grateful? Do you know who you were with last night? Do you know where you were last night? Did you have to get up this morning and look for your car?
No.
In 1980, I was living at the bottom of Lincoln Road in Miami Beach. Why am I here today? Why am I here today? Bill Wilson said once that we are a separate entity. We are people when we see other people drink with impunity. We can watch people go to liquor stores and have a few little drinky poos and they're absolutely fine. And that same alcohol totally destroyed me, destroyed my life, took my mother away from my children. That innocuous little fluid. And I'm baffled today, with 39 years of sobriety as I was back then. I don't understand it. Of course, I don't need to understand it. I know this. It was not the toxicity of alcohol that was killing me. It was the unbearable, unsheddable burden of self-consciousness. That every time I came out of a blackout, every time I came out of... Because you can't stay drunk all the time. I've tried it. You can't. And every time you come out of that, you have this unbearable burden of self-consciousness. Never mind the hangovers, it's the mind. You see, all I ever wanted was a little bit of shush. That's all I ever wanted. A little bit of shush. Because I am one of those that has a predisposition to alcoholism centered in my personality. And I have come to realize too that it's not the wrongs that I did, but it's the way that they shaped my life. It is the way that they shaped my life. Because eventually what alcohol did for me was give me a change of personality, which I needed. It helped me to forget all the things I'd done long before I drank. What I found in these rooms when I came in here was understanding. You know, have you ever had a tune or... I'm going to date myself, but back in the day, my favourite record was George Benson playing Masquerade. You ever heard it? Searching but not finding, understanding anywhere, I'm lost in a masquerade. I was looking for that all my life. I was looking for it in a bottle. I found it at age 40 when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I had been searching. I was sitting this morning thinking again. Shouldn't think. Clancy used to tell me not to think. Even my very first date I ever had with a boy, when you're supposed to have a connection with another human being, he was trying to get me interested. It was my first date in the sexual act. And I was not there. I was there physically, but not mentally, because I was thinking about myself. And I remember saying to him at the height of his passion, "So what do you think about death?" And he said to me, "I think you should go home now," because I was absolutely obsessed by all these strange things. So the great idea of alcohol, what alcohol could do for me, was this. For me. And why I pursued it. The idea that someday, somehow, I'll enjoy and control my alcohol is a great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Some of us pursue it into the gates of insanity and death. I did that. I did that. And why did I do that? Because it gave me a little bit of shush. It gave me a little bit of normal living, because I was never right. I wasn't right from the get-go. I always knew there was something wrong with me, because people were always saying to me, "There's something seriously wrong with you." And I never knew what it was. I didn't know what it was until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. The depth of my gratitude is perhaps the depth I'm coming from, and I love very much what Bob was talking about today. Because this is what gave me life. This is what gave me my children back. My children were gone for 13 years. My heart's cracked and it never healed. And I go back and forth trying to see them in a drunken state, because of my love for my children. I lost everything. And yet today I have it all back. This is so precious. This is all we have. We don't have anything else. We don't have I don't know what they all are. I can't even remember. BA, CA, DA, FFA, SHIA. All kind of things which are very good for people, but all we have is AA. Do you know what I said I was telling Bob, I said to somebody the other day, because I was in a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they were determined to introduce themselves as an addict, and they were determined to talk about LSD, shooting cocaine, selling this, selling that, right? I'm kind of like my friend Martin there. I thought crystal meth was a woman. I had no idea. Right? So, I had no idea, right? So I very gently brought it to the chairperson's attention that this was a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they started berating me. Berating me that I'm destroying people's lives. I don't have that power. But I'll tell you this. If you read the wonderful essay that Bill Wilson wrote in 1958 called Problems Other Than Alcohol, in that essay he said there's no way to make a non-alcoholic addict into an AA member. He went on to say, if we do, we'll kill them. And I have seen that time after time after time. When we have taken somebody in here, and Billy spoke about it the other night, and even we don't identify them, but we say, that's okay, we'll help you. And they end up dying. Because you see, there's been talk of the biblical this morning by my wonderful Marilyn that I just love, and wonderful Bob that I adore. Both of them I love and admire them so much. There's a wonderful thing that Carl Jung used once. And it's a quote from St. Thomas in the Bible. And it said, if you bring out what is dark and hidden within you, what you bring out will save you. If you do not bring out what is dark and hidden within you, what you do not bring out will destroy you. We get the opportunity in here, because alcoholism is a soul sickness. We get the opportunity to bring out what is dark and hidden within us that has always separated us from others. That thing that has always given us that level of shame that to me only alcoholics can suffer. And if you're not an alcoholic and you don't feel you belong in the rooms, you're not going to be able to talk about this stuff. We stand up here and we bare our souls because in the hope that you will identify, in the hope that someone who feels that they're not enough like I did can say, oh, somebody else felt like that. It's wonderful. So I am just so grateful for this weekend. I love it. It reminds me of when my beloved Clancy used to come all the time and we'd be here together. And these are two of my, we all used to be Clancy sponsees, carrying on his legacy and his great love of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll finish with a Bill Wilson quote, which I love. Bill Wilson said, Alcoholics Anonymous is not a success story. Rather, it is the chronicle of our colossal human failure, turned to usefulness by the divine alchemy of a loving God. Thank you.